The projection combine curve command creates a 3D curve from the result of projecting two other items together. For example, projecting two 2D cross sections, or two 3D curves, or one cross section and a 3D curve, or even a part edge. A simple example here is we're going to project these two curves together to create a final 3D curve. So you can see we have two 2D profiles. This one has a kind of right angled turn in it, and this one has a downwards turn in it. And if we click on these, we can see the arrow for the direction they're currently pointing. Now if I click on the projection combine curve command, I'll select the first curve, which is this one here, and you can see the arrow showing, which is currently showing the direction of the profile normal. And it's generally easiest to use the projection combine curve command if you have 2D profiles and not 3D curves, because if you're combining with a 3D curve, it doesn't have a default direction like the profile normal you see here. So you can input a direction, which is what's needed if you're doing it with 3D curves or with part edges. But if you have a 2D profile, you get this profile normal option, which makes it a lot easier. And I'll show you more detail on that later on in the video. So you can see here we've got that one selected, and I'm going to use the same profile normal option on the second one here. And now you can see the result is being shown in a preview. Basically, it's this curve here and this curve here projected across in that direction, and to wherever they meet, it creates a 3D curve. So the 3D curve that's going to be created is basically a combination of both of those. Now we'll hit OK, and you can see that 3D curve has been created. Now let's look at something a little bit more advanced here. Maybe if we change this profile to something more complex. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a wavy spline in here. And now we have this wavy spline and this one here. So let's maybe change the angle of this a little bit, and then we'll get a different result as well. I'm going to rotate that around with the triball. And again, we'll use a projection combine curve. I'll select this one, and then I'll go ahead and click into the next curve box here, select this one, and now you can see the result is going to be a combination of that curve and this curve, so that this curve is currently on a 2D profile. It's 2D curved spline there. But then if you see, we look up here, this is now following the path of this one. So it's combining both those curves together at their meeting point to create a new 3D curve. Now it's worth noting that you can also use 3D curves for this process as well. So let's keep this curve that we've just created and actually use it in another example. So I'm going to delete these 2D profiles. I'm going to bring out a block here. So we have a pretty simple block. I'm going to move this 3D curve up. I'm actually going to orient the triball to this block just to make things easier. When working with 3D curves, it's often useful to have something like a block in the scene that you can align to, but you can always just make the triball white and then right click and orient triball to the global coordinates. Now you can see that curve there, and I'll stretch this block a little bit so it's a little bit bigger. Now we're going to use the same command, but this time we're going to use this front line of this block and this 3D curve. And when I first select this 3D curve, you'll see that we no longer have the profile normal option. Because it's a 3D curve, it doesn't have a profile normal direction. It doesn't know the direction it should go in. Because a 2D profile has an upwards direction from the where the 2D profile is. Because this is 3D, it doesn't have that same direction. It doesn't really know where it should go. So we need to set an input direction here. Now you notice if we try and click on the 3D curve to set an input direction, it's going to be quite hard, because there's not really much on here that can help us set a direction. You can see we can get that direction there, which is kind of going up that way, but it's not that useful of a direction. So this is why for our direction we're actually going to use the block we have. And I'm going to set this to go down. So I'll select this edge here, or maybe I'll set it to go up actually, across actually. So I'm going to set, clicked a few too many times there. I'm going to set this as the direction going across. So it's going to take this direction, this 3D curve is going to go across in that direction for the projection. So you can see here, without the profile normal options that we have with the 2D profile, it's a little bit harder to do. Now I'm going to set this curve to be here, like that. So this is the next curve we're using. And this one is going to use the up direction. So I'm going to toggle that arrow to flip it. I want to toggle this other arrow to flip it here as well. Or we can just click on the reverse option. So now you can see the 3D curve here is going across in this direction where the red arrow currently is, and the 2D edge of the 3D geometry is going up in that direction to create that final result you see there. Then we'll hit OK, and that produces that new 3D curve. Now we could also have something even more complex where we have two 3D curves, for example. So let's go ahead and create a new 3D curve, and I'm going to draw it on this side of the block just to make things easier when drawing the 3D curve. So it just gives us a good positioning to start the 3D curve. So we've got a 2D plane to draw it onto, at least at the start. So I'm going to draw a 3D curve here and put a few points like that. So now it's a 3D curve on a 2D plane. Now I'm going to click on these points, activate the triball, and start bringing it into 3D space. It's a little bit easier than trying to sketch the 3D curve just in empty space, because you don't really have reference for where the 3D curve is going. So let's create something kind of unique there. And I'll just move this block out of the way so that we can now see the 3D curves. But I'm going to keep the block here because we do actually want to use it. Because if we now try to set the projection combine curve command on these two curves, it's going to be very hard to set their direction. So you can see we can select that curve and this curve, and by default they've actually got quite good directions there that it's using as the default directions currently. So that's quite useful. But if we wanted to choose our own direction, it's going to be very hard to try and direct these without a block like this, without other geometry. So that's where I'm going to use the block. The first 3D curve here, I'm going to project down like that. So that 3D curve is this one. It's going to go down. And then the second 3D curve here, which is this one, I'm going to set to go across. And now you can see that, we can reverse that, but in this case it's whoops, let me flip that back over. And you can see that going across there. So basically it's going to combine this curve with this curve. And you can see if we look at this curve from this angle, you can see it's combining that profile of this curve. So it's the projection direction, that profile of this curve with this profile of the top curve, because they're the projection directions that we set. Then we hit OK. That will now create that combined curve. That's how to use the projection combined curve command.